Hey everybody, welcome back to the You Are a Severance podcast with your refined hosts, Kali Thomas.
Hello.
And it's me, Rodnesha Green. We are here today with a very special guest, and we are going to skip the usual introductory banter that we do because we want to get straight to our guest today. We are so excited to sit down with them. We're very big fans of their work, and I'm guessing that you are as well. She has informed so much of what we have seen on the show. So we are going to give you her bio, and then we'll get into it.
Our guest today has been involved in the film and television industry for over 15 years. She is executive producer of the film Summer's End and has prop mastered over 17 projects, collaborating closely with the likes of Ben Stiller of Severance, the Safdie brothers from Uncut Gems, and Derek Cianfrance from I Know This Much Is True, among others. She was nominated for a MacGuffin Award for her work with Britt Marling and Zal Batmongleve for A Murder at the End of the World. Her work on Severance was featured in the New York Times, Variety, Road and Track, and The Drive and Polygon. Her creation of the iconic diamond-encrusted Furby for Uncut Gems was reported by Vulture and was exhibited in the Museum of the City of New York's This Is New York, 100 Years of the City in Art and Pop Culture. In 2022, Miller was tapped by the marketing team to be the lead Severance creative consultant for Apple TV Plus's first San Diego Comic-Con activation, and they recreated the hit event in 2024 for Brazil's Comic-Con XP, the world's largest Comic-Con convention. In 2025, Miller also helped implement Severance's viral marketing stunt in Grand Central Terminal. Before finding her way into motion pictures, Miller enjoyed an extensive performance career as a dance artist, touring internationally in contemporary companies and performing operas, including the Metropolitan Opera, and as principal in New York City Opera Orpheus. Miller's dancing has been hailed by the New York Times as mesmerizing and captivating. Her acting credits include the role of Katie in the award-winning feature by Alan Brown, Five Dances. She holds a BFA from UNC School of the Arts, where she returned throughout her career to teach as guest faculty. In 2016, she was selected by Susan Joffe to be the director of all summer dance programming at UNCSA. During her tenure, Miller successfully rebranded the intensive, tripled participation, and founded the Enduring Choreographic Institute.
Please welcome our beyond refined guest, Catherine "Cat" Miller. Hello.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello.
Welcome.
That was quite an intro. Thank you.
How are you feeling this morning? How are you doing?
I am so excited to be here. I am a huge fan of you guys and your podcast and how detailed and how granular you guys get. And I just think, both of you are a part of the Severance world.
Wow.
Because you get and understand and dig and are super smart. And I just love listening. I learn things. I learn things about the show and I listen to your podcast.
I love
I'm
that.
just really excited to be here and talk to you guys.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm gonna eat on that for a
That's
while.
wonderful.
I'm
Yes.
going to save that and put it on my phone when I'm having a discouraging day. I'm going to be like, oh, Catherine said we're doing good. Catherine said we're doing good. But that is so nice. Thank you, Kat. Honestly, it's really nice to hear that it is being received, like the links to which we are willing to go to like get deep with everything. But it's the type of show that I don't understand how you can't want to dig deeper.
Yes.
You guys lay the foundation so well with the work that each of you do. You guys make it so that we're paying attention to everything.
Right. And then just wanting to, rewatch and being able to find something different and new about it every time.
I mean, I'm so lucky to work on the show because it is just a group of dedicated artists and craftsmen and people who are at the top of their game wanting to create a world within this show, like wanting to create the world of this corporation, of this town, of these like very moral questions and conflicting ideas. And to be able to come together with this group of people and really make this world, everybody's layering in what they're amazing at and creating something that just goes beyond what one good craft person can do. And together, the sum is greater than the parts because the world informs itself and each other. So, when I collaborate with Sarah Edwards, the costume designer, on what color she might be putting Helly in or Helena in a scene and why, and can I, change something within what I'm doing to help that or support that?
Mm.
Or, like in Woe's Hollow episode, when we were able to collaborate, she made so many amazing pieces of costumes, and we were able to then add to that with the gloves. It's just there's so many examples of that in this show. So many amazing artists coming together, layering it, and then just presenting it and not over explaining it either. That's where Ben's really good at understanding the balance of how much to give to the audience and knowing our audience is intelligent, knowing our audience wants to not have it spoon fed to us. And, I'm saying I'm the audience too, because I'm a fan of the show too, watching it.
Right.
And then to like really be able to say, no, the audience is smart enough to connect some dots. And, it's just a great show to work on.
Not only that, but trusting you guys to know what you're doing within your own departments and worlds to help create the vision. Like, I don't know how Ben directs, but I assume that he puts a lot of faith in you guys to understand the vision and be able to take it off in your direction and add the layers to it without him having to get so granular, is my guess, at least.
Yes, that's exactly how it is. He trusts each of the departments and the department heads and the people within the departments to bring their A game, to support the story. He trusts that everything is going to support the story that we're presenting and that we all have an understanding of the story and the world that we're building. If something is not in the right direction, he'll tap it back into alignment. But really, we're all kind of working at the same end game, which is supporting what's on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And he trusts us to bring him our thoughts and our ideas. That, it's very rare to have a show where so many people are welcomed to the creative table and ideas are offered up and considered. That's just not always the case. The prop master isn't always offering creative ideas that will then change the story or the script. And that happens with a lot of departments. And the trust there is, it means that there's no ego involved, that we're all working towards the story. And it's not somebody saying, no, well, if it's not my idea, then I don't want to hear it. And that's super rare and a kind of very beautiful scenario that gets created.
I love it. There's a lot of interdepartmental mingling happening on the crew, if you will. Rodnesha and I have talked a lot about where's the overlap and where does one department begin and one department end. So we will definitely get into that with you, Kat. But first, let's spend a little time on background. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up, your interests and whatnot.
Oh boy, I'm a Jersey girl. I grew up in Jersey.
Ah.
My dad was in the movie business. And so I grew up with him. He was a key grip.
Okay.
I mean, I grew up with my mom too, just saying that out there. Hi, Mom. And I grew up being very involved in a lot of things. I'm an only child, so I was put into a lot of different activities. And the one that stuck the most and that I gravitated towards was dance. So I grew up very, very heavily involved in dance. It consumed a lot of my upbringing, and I grew to really love it and really have a passion for it and understand the movement and kinetic movement. And I knew that I wanted to pursue that. And so I went to University of North Carolina School of the Arts as a contemporary dance major, not in film at all, and graduated from there and had a pretty decent career in dance, and then was able to transition into film a little later on. But really growing up, I was exposed to a lot of different types of activities. I took art class, I took horseback riding, and I was really lucky to have those experiences. And sometimes I still draw on little tidbits that I remember from way back then. And I got to, go to set a couple of times with my dad would take me to set, or my mom would drive me into set. And I got to sit on an apple box in the corner of set and just watch how everything happened and moved. And it was a very exciting atmosphere and a very exciting place to be. And I knew important things were going on. I didn't understand what the heck was going on, but I knew things were going on and everyone was very serious about their work and very, very focused. And they were all kind of in this rhythm, which was really beautiful to see. Yeah, and so I was able to be exposed to a lot of stuff, but I had no thought in my mind that I was going to end up in the movie business at all. Growing up, I was like, I was a dancer, and that's all I was.
Just based on that. One thing that perked my ear was Only Child, which Callie knows that life. I do not. So I have two siblings and it's apparent. Being an only child, did you find yourself kind of gravitating to the arts because it lets you be kind of immersive without needing to have a lot of other people involved? Do you feel like your only child upbringing just kind of like broadened your scope a bit? Because when you have siblings, you got to share, you got to do their things, you got to go to their stuff, you got to take turns. It's a whole thing. So I've always been very curious for like the only child, what life is like from that perspective growing up. I've heard some things. I have a few friends that are only kids, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think being an only child, there's amazing benefits to it, and there's a lot of cons to it as well. So the benefits are that you do get the resources and the attention that you don't have to split with any other siblings. The cons, though, are you feel, or at least I did in my experience growing up, feel the pressure of having to uh, how do I say it? You feel the pressure of being the only child and having to live up to expectations, whether they're
Mm-hmm.
there or perceived. And I was an only grandchild as well, so there was always a pressure that I wanted to achieve and perform and do well, and really drive myself to continue to do well. And I don't think that pressure expectations were really there. That was just something that was inside of me.
Yeah.
And then dance informed that even more. So in dance, it's an art form. I imagine like in music or instruments or acting, you've never arrived. There's never a point of arrival where you're like, I am now done and perfect at dance. So you're always striving, which is such an awesome thing that you're always looking and seeking and being curious for the next level that you can up your game. But there's also then the opposite of that of there's a knowledge you will never be good enough. You will never actually arrive. And
Right.
so that
Mhm.
kind of dichotomy, I think, really drove me and informed my growing up. And also, I think if I had any siblings, that might have been a little diluted because there was just other people to take focus. But yeah, I think being an only child has definitely made me who I am. I mean, obviously, it has made me who I am.
So going back to the dance stuff, what was the transition into your professional career? Because one thing I've never experienced, obviously, is like going and doing a full dance undergrad major, I'm sure was very intense. But I always wonder how dancers get into the professional world because it's not like there's an internship, or are there internships in dance? I don't know. So I'm always curious how dancers find, their kind of professional foothold once they leave school.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
Okay.
not easy. It's not an easy transition. And I think it's probably also getting harder and harder.
Mm,
There is no one path. I focused on classical ballet until I was injured at around 17. I had a major injury, I had surgery. And because of the injury, I was no longer able to do point work. So I transitioned into contemporary dance.
okay.
And so I was a contemporary dance major at School of the Arts. And in ballet, there is a path to go into company, studio company positions. It's like in baseball, there's the majors and then there's the minors league. And some organizations will have like minor league to be able to have dancers learn, and it's
Grow
an
their
extended
skills. Yeah.
to grow their skills. It's an extended audition before you get invited to the first company. And so there is a path for that in ballet. Those positions are very limited. In contemporary, there's really very little path in that direction. And I can't speak, it's been a while since I got out of school. I won't say how many years, but it was terrifying. As any transition out of school is for anybody right now. There's no clear and guaranteed path. That's the thing. There's no guaranteed path.
Mm,
And so I came up, I just started auditioning. I waited tables, I landed gigs here and there. I was lucky enough to land into a company. I stayed there for a couple of years. I went into a different company. Like I had a very lucky series of
breaks. Yeah.
opportunities. Yeah, but not everybody does. But at first,
Mhm.
you come in, you're like, okay, I don't know how to pay rent. I don't know how to, budget. I don't know where I'm getting money from. I'm in New York City, the classic story. And I just figured it
You
out.
just figure it out.
You just figure it out. You wait tables, you hustle, you
Mhm.
cater. You got to figure it out and navigate that path. There's no clear and guaranteed way.
Right.
So the typical artist path.
The
Awesome.
typical artist path.
Yeah, that much is true across artist
Yes.
Across all the
lines.
Yeah.
spectrums.
I
Yeah.
had like a
Um,
futon on the floor. We ate
yes,
out of tuna cans. It was,
A lot of ramen,
ramen,
lot of
right?
prayers, a lot of ramen. Yeah.
a lot of prayers, a lot of rum.
But
Um,
it teaches you grit, it teaches you perseverance, it teaches you to really hone in on what it is you
Mm,
want. And every decision then you have to weigh against, is this getting me closer to what I want or further away from what I want? And it really is able to make you focus on pursuing the path. You keep at it and you keep putting those blinders on and just seeing what you want and keep kind of going after it.
yeah.
mhm. So, how then did you make the transition from this dance career to prop mastering?
That's a great question. There was in the summer of I Am Legend and American Gangster shooting in New York City.
Mhm.
Mm,
My dad was on American Gangster. And those projects, those two movies, were so large in scope, and there were so many crew members and IATSE Local 52 union members
Mhm.
that were working on those jobs. They didn't have enough people to crew up
mm.
everything that was needed. They were sweeping large movies that required, a lot of transforming New York City into different landscapes
Very
and
different landscapes
very
too.
different
Yeah.
landscapes and like epically different. And so they were saying, hey, if you guys know anybody who's interested in film or anything, bring them in, because we just need more people. They were like, your neighbor's sister, brother's cousin, if they want to work, bring them in. We need more people. And so I had just finished a tour with a dance company and I was on like a 3-month hiatus with them. And my dad was like, hey, you want to get a week of work in the set dressing warehouse? And I was like, okay. And so I knew nothing about it at all. I went for a week and it was cool. It was like we were packing things up and loading trucks and unpacking set dressing. And they were like, this is for the bar scene and this is for the house. And, we were labeling things. And I was like trying to understand the story. And then I got the check at the end of the week, and it was the equivalent to many, many months of dancing checks and pay. And I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. And my grandfather was in the business too. He was a grip as well in the business, and he at the time was like, "Hey, this could be a great part-time job for you if a temporary part-time job.
Hmm.
In the times when you're off from dance." He's like, "You should think about it." And so the set dressing crew, the lead man was Phil Camfield, and he, liked the way I hustled, and he still needed people. He's like, "You want to stay on for a few more weeks?" And I said, "Sure." And so I continued in the set dressing shop. I continued learning more. I was asking all these questions. I'm sure I was annoying all of them, but I was just curious, like, how does this work? And
Mhm.
why is the scenics over here? And what are they doing? And who's responsible? And so I was just kind of absorbing everything that I could. I ended up staying on for the whole job and was able to apply to get into the union at the end of that job.
Mhm.
Nice.
And from there, I spent many years dancing. I was able to then not have to be in a dance company. I was able to then freelance as a dance artist and performer
Mm,
and audition for projects that I just really wanted to do. And then I could go and set dress or prop for, a month or two in a downtime and be able to then kind of afford the dance habit and enable the dance
Ah.
habit and to do some freelancing. So I was able to balance that for many years. And in that time, I was constantly learning more and more about the film world, about TV, about movies, about just everything that makes a film set run. And so from there, my aunt is a prop master. And at first, she was like, I don't have any room on my crew because prop crews are very, very small. And usually, prop teams work together for most jobs. They go from job to job together. And finally, she had one of her prop team unable from a scheduling conflict to do a job, and she was like, "Okay, come on, Kat, you're up. I'm gonna teach everything I know." And that was when my first experience of being on set. So from being offset in the warehouse or like helping dress the sets, I was now experiencing being on set for the first time as a crew member. And seeing that was suddenly very familiar in terms of the pace and the stamina and the community and the way people work together. And it was very familiar to being a performer and like putting on a live performance and all the tech in the backstage stuff that goes on to mount this live performance. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is my jam. This is, yeah, I get this. And this is awesome. And so then I just started like, I just wanted to know everything. I just wanted to learn everything and everybody's position. And the camera person, I was asking about the electrics and power and, voltage and costumers. And then it was just like, it started to gain momentum for me that it made sense. And I could be a part of this unit because everybody knew their roles and everybody would, like a well-oiled machine, be able to go do their thing, let the scene go and shoot the scene, and then they would snap back into it and change everything around. And it's really exciting. There's not a lot like it that I've experienced in the world of everybody knowing kind of their marching orders and then being able to pause while the scene goes and then immediately
jumping in. Yep.
jump back in and recreate something entirely new.
See, this is the exciting stuff that I'm like, everybody needs to know this because, obviously there's so much front facing when it comes to movies and TV. Like you're looking at the stars of the show, you're looking at the directors and writers, but like what people don't understand, I think a lot of the times, and even actors, I'd say, it's like how much is going into the setup and creation and the build of the world constantly. If you've ever been on a film set, people moving constantly, someone's doing something at any given point. And I love hearing all the behind the scenes stuff because it's like these are the things that you don't know. These are the wheels that are constantly turning that when you get the finished product, it's all seamless and you just get a brilliant show like this, but you don't know how many hands are in the pot somehow managing to work together and not step on each other's toes. It's amazing.
Yeah, on any given day on Severance, you could have from 200 to 500 people working on that show on any given day. Every second of screen time, there's like an army behind it making that happen.
And also, Catherine, this is a family business, is what I'm finding out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of relatives that you have in the film. I was like, this is a family business. This is what this is.
Yeah, for me, I'm fourth generation in the union. I'm very lucky. And to my parents' credit, they did not force me into the business. They did not say, when you turn 18, you're going to, become a grip or something. They were like, no, you have this passion and this dream of dancing. Go pursue it, And my dad was like, if this world is here and it's something you want to pursue in the future, fine, it'll be here. But no, they didn't make me do it. And I don't think my parents ever envisioned me doing it. I think they always thought I'd be involved in the dance world in some way. And so there was no pressure. The offer for me to do that 1 week of set dressing was purely just so my dad could feel like I could pay the rent probably. And so
give him a little peace of mind. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, there's no pressure to do it. But there is a pressure, I will say, to live up to the family name. So I'll always feel like I can't slack off because I had family before me. I feel more pressure to live up to that name and to work twice as hard to make my family proud of what I'm doing.
So besides your aunt, did you ever run into like people on set that worked with your dad?
Yeah. So my aunt and my dad were in the business for a very long time. They just both recently retired, and so it's a very small world, and a lot of people are like, oh, your aunt, your dad, yeah, say hi, and I love that. I think that's awesome.
That's good. Okay, question for you, Kat. Do you feel like being a dancer has affected or shaped your approach to prop work? Does that inform how you start building on your prop set or approach your prop work?
Yes. When I was at school as a dancer at School of the Arts, we were exposed to so many different other art forms and other people pursuing art forms. And there was a real sense of just broadening my scope of understanding because I was very narrow, like I dance and movement is the only thing. And then, the idea of the way music flows and then theater really kind of blew my mind open about what's possible with the arts. In school, I met my husband. He was an acting major, and we would talk every night of what we were learning in class and what we discovered and stuff. And what he taught me in just talking about the arts and constantly kind of driving each other forward is that for him, what he was learning, Gerald Friedman was the dean at the time of the School of Acting, and they were learning what theatricality meant and what an objective was and what a spine was and how in art, in theater specifically, a character goes for what they want and how everything can inform what they want and the choices of what will support what's written on the page, stories and the script. And I was able to then start translating that into dance and be able to say what is, as a character, dancing right now, even if it was dealing with, the color blue or something kind of very esoteric that is more about interpretation in dance. I was able to then inform, well, what movements would help with the color blue. And so then jumping into props, I started thinking about how a prop can inform the story, like an object, just a pure object can help inform the story. Is it getting us closer to telling the story that the director wants to tell, or is it getting us further away? And so kind of all of that, journey of dance artists learning other theater stuff really just comes down to life. What do you want in life? Are you pursuing it? How are you pursuing it? What do these characters in Severance want? What does each of them want? Does the object that I'm creating help us get them closer or further away from what they want? And so, so I think definitely I am informed, and the way that I approach sourcing objects, creating objects, designing objects is completely informed by my sense of what helps tell the story.
It's so true. At the end of the day, with storytelling, there is an objective. And how do you get your objective? How do you get what you want? All of that lands in different ways. And I love how, even with the visual side of the storytelling, as an actor, you have your words. You don't always have your words, but you get a script, you have the words you're going to follow. There's, a bit of a trail, but I love for the visual side of it when it comes to props, when it comes to cinematography, where you find the storytelling in that to help move the narrative. What's going to establish mood? What's going to establish intent? What's going to tell something about a character's inner working. I don't know. I love that is there in your brain when you're going to do this detailed work with props.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everything, and on a show like Severance, it's welcome. That kind of detail is totally welcome because everybody's trying to do that with every bit that they're doing. Jessica Lee Gagne is doing that with her cinematography approach. Jeremy Hindle, the production designer, is doing that with his mind-blowing designs for all these different crazy places that we visit. The decorator, David Schlesinger, is doing that with why he's putting certain furniture and dressing into a room. I think it's super key. I think it's a reason why people respond to the show so much is because everybody's putting that thought into it and their kind of heart and soul and all of their artistic experiences into it as well.
That makes me want to jump around to some of our questions that we have later on. But I do have one more kind of establishing
We're getting there. I know.
The
itch is there. I know.
I'm like, okay. So, how did you become the prop master on Severance? Is that the first thing that you've done with Ben? Have you guys worked together previously?
Yeah, I did not work with Ben previously before this. Jeremy Hindle, the production designer, called me up for an interview to come in. It was December of 2019. We had a great interview. I knocked over a vase on a table and I just started hysterically laughing. I was like, I can't believe I'm interviewing with this big time production designer. And I just knocked the vase off the table. And, we hit it off right there. He was like, okay, you're going to be okay. And so then he was like, you got to meet Ben, come in and meet Ben. And so on my birthday, actually in December in 2019, I went in to meet with Ben at some post-production studios because they hadn't set up any studios or stages or anything. It was very early in the process. They haven't even really started prepping yet for season 1. And I met Ben, and I guess maybe I should have been nervous to meet Ben, but I wasn't. He was very warm and not imposing or intimidating at all. And he was super curious about work that I had done and the way I approach propping. Uncut Gems had just come out, and he had seen it, and he was asking me all these questions about it. And then I was working living with Derek C. in France at the time. And, Derek really opened up my mind about propping and how creating the world of where in the environment in which the actors need to live in and be in for their scenes. And he wanted everything to be super authentic and real. And he wanted them to be able to open a drawer and really see what's inside and have it be part of the world so that it can do two things. One, not make them have to act so much. If they're in an environment where they have to now pretend they're in a certain environment rather than just being in an environment, they just have to pretend to be the character. And two, they can also be able to use those pieces and those parts of that environment in their acting, and to be able to limit what an actor can do by just having a very narrow, just what's on the desktop, and they can only live in that. And you have to tell them you can't open these drawers or this cabinet over here because there's nothing in it. He thought was very limiting. The thing with Derek was always prop the life outside of the frame. So a lot of times a director will just be like, just give me what's the top sheet of what's on the folder. I don't need them to be able to open up the folder. And knowing now what can happen in the moment, the magic that can happen in the moment by being able to open up the folder, now everything in the folder is real and authentic.
I see Rodnesha shaking her head I hate that when I can't open the folder.
Okay, listen. I've literally in my head as you were talking, I was like, thank God for prop people. Thank you for the work you do, because listen, it is hard. Not that an actor can't do it, but it just at a certain point you're like, this is silly. There's nothing here, and I have to act like something's here, and it helps the actor live in the moment and be able to just settle into the reality of it rather than play it. And you don't think it's important until you're in that moment. Like, I'll give you an example. I just finished a play and we had a scene where I'm a lawyer and I'm supposed to be giving someone their, final divorce papers to sign. And when we were rehearsing it, it was like, we'll figure something out. Just act like there's a folder there. And you're just like, all right. And at a certain point, I think the director was like, maybe we need to actually have like something in the folder. Should we have something in the folder? Because at first he was just going to give us a folder and whatever. And it seems innocuous, but it just lets your brain be like, this is real, rather than have to imagine what this form might look like. It does matter a lot. So I'll say thank you for that. I know there are directors who think it doesn't matter and it's not important and you're not going to need it. But then there's times too where you start doing the scene and you realize what you're catching or what you're seeing in the frame. And it's like, oh, well, now it looks silly because it's just a blank piece of paper and we probably need to have the actual thing there, So anyway, I appreciate the work that you guys do. As an actor, it does help to have props. Props help a lot, guys. Props matter.
Props help a lot. That should be a t-shirt.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it does help a lot. And it was a light bulb moment for me where it changed the way I approach props and how I can help the actor also in the props. And you never want to be limiting. We don't want to limit the possibility for magic to happen in the moment. And so anything we can do to not limit that. And that goes for, like you say, what the cinematographer can focus on and what we can see in a shot or not see in a shot. The worst thing is to be able to have a piece of paper, like a newspaper, but it's not a real newspaper or anything. So you have to like kind of hide it and put it below frame. And you never want to do that.
It cheats the experience and it cheats the audience of the experience. So yeah, that's all. I'm done. I'll get off my soapbox.
Needless to say, Ben asked me a little bit about in the initial meeting, had I ever fabricated a computer before? And I was like, I probably should have just lied and said yes. But he's like, I think we're gonna need to fabricate a computer. I was like, okay, cool, we can do that. And he offered me the job, and I said yes. And a few weeks later, in January of 2020, I started up.
Ooh, and here we are. Okay, all right, we can finally start getting into some of the meat and potatoes of this meal. Okay, guys, it's prop time. Listen, look at me. See?
You got your props. It's lovely. It's good.
I want to live in the moment.
Pantone.
All right. So, Kat, can you explain for our listeners what exactly a prop master is? Sorry, side note, we found in the research we were going through, and Kali just randomly was like, what does prop master stand for? And realized that it's property.
Yeah, I think I saw in your LinkedIn or somewhere. I was like, it's obvious now, but I don't know that I ever thought. Why? I just thought props was props and not short for property, and now I feel silly.
I think it's way back from like olden theater times, that the property of what the character has in their hands.
Makes sense.
And it's, yeah. So props are defined as anything an actor touches, anything an actor interacts with, anything specifically noted in a script that there would be interaction with, usually falls under the props realm. Larger objects like furniture and chairs and tables and lamps and stuff is set dressing, and the set decorator takes care of those. As a prop master, I'm in charge of identifying, pulling options for, sourcing, and getting objects that the actors are interacting with into the actors' hands in a given scene. And I'm the department head for a whole team of prop people. And I have a really awesome team. And there was a very large team that poured their heart and soul into Severance. And as a team, we first break down the script, and anything that's a personal, which we define as a watch or glasses or wedding bands or, a backpack or a certain type of bag, that's called a personal prop, and we break that down. We identify any objects in the scene that an actor would interact with. In New York, prop masters and props are responsible for cars, so we identify all vehicles and picture cars. We're also responsible for any animals, so we identify any animals within the script, any firearms that would be in the script, any food scenes, any kind of food, whether it's background food or stuff that the hero characters are making, we're responsible for. And basically, we break that down. I'll meet with the director, the production designer. Sometimes the producers will be in the room as well, and we'll start talking about scene by scene each one of these props. And I'll either source them by buying them, I will make them, I'll design them and fabricate them myself, meaning the prop team will do it. We'll work with picture car vendors to source options of picture cars, and then I'll present a bunch of options to the director, the designer, maybe the producers, or a showrunner if it's a TV show. And we'll talk through the options. We'll narrow down the options usually, and I'll physically source a bunch of them, and we'll have a big show and tell in the pre-production process in which I'll lay out everything on big tables, and me and the team will go through each one, and everyone will make decisions. If it's the personals, I'll go into the fittings for the actors and present trays of glasses, trays of rings, trays of watches that we think fall in line with the character, and they will try a few on. Sometimes we'll save those things for the camera test, and we'll camera test different glasses, and we'll all be able to review the camera test footage to kind of make an informed decision about what works best for the character. And then we have to get them on the truck. We have a prop truck, a trailer, a 43-foot trailer in which all of the props go on and move to different locations. And it's our kind of mobile home base. And then we got to get them off the truck and in the hands of the actor and into the scene when we film them. And then we have to make sure we don't lose them.
You know what I hear when I hear you speaking? I hear this is not a job for you, Rodnesha, because I don't think anyone with ADD would be able to do this job, because the amount of organization and tracking that you must have. I literally was like, how big is that binder once you aggregate all of those details for all of those scenes and moments? Like, I didn't even realize animals were part of props. I never thought about it, but that makes sense. Yeah. It is a prop. I never thought about that. I'm like, oh my gosh. So you'll have to deal with animal wranglers, picture card, like that's a lot to track.
So then, Kat, were you responsible for whatever the dead thing was in Woe's Hollow?
I was. Yes, I was tasked with that. Yes. It's a dead seal.
Okay,
it is a dead seal. Okay.
It's a dead seal. And it was scripted as a dead seal.
Okay.
And if you have theories about why it's there, I'd love to hear them.
I'm sure. I know we did in the moment. Well, a lot of it was us just trying to figure out, is it a dead seal? Is it some weird experiment? Is it a creature? There's been a lot of like somewhat Twin Peaksy theories, I feel like, about the seal and what it might actually be. And are they covering up like government conspiracies? I've seen a lot.
Yes, we were responsible for the dead seal. Like, that is a great example of what you see in a script that is not set dressing, that is not part of the art department's design. That's an object that, even though they're not interacting with it, that's the type of object that would fall into a props department purview.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but with the seal, how did we make it? What is it? What is it comprised of?
Well, this is a great place to talk about Panko. Panko is our master sculptor on the show, and Panko is responsible for just about any sculpture that you see
Mm.
in the show, any Kier sculpture that you see, the duck rabbit behind Milchick's desk.
The duck rabbit that took me forever to figure out what it
Yeah,
was.
perseverated on that for a little bit.
Oof.
And so he's great. And he did the Irving watermelon head. He sculpts everything. And so I went down to him and I was like, oh, the dead seal. And we talked about it for a long time. We came up with renderings of what it could possibly look like. There's many discussions with Ben and Dan Erickson about the rate of decay in the dead seal. So we put together reference decks and lookbooks that we can then present images and renderings, and then that kind of narrows down our path. And then we kind of decided on a layer of decay. And then Panko made a couple of maquettes, smaller versions of it. We all signed off on one version of it. And then he and three other sculptors started sculpting out of, I believe it was foam, started sculpting the body of it. And we had a couple of different size references. So we were trying to figure out scale.
Yeah.
And then he just started going to town on it. And he's so good and can get beautiful classical things and then the gross, decay of the seal. And it weighed a lot. It was very heavy. And so to get it into the location, we were shooting upstate in New York, near Lake Minnewaska and the falls there. So we created the dead seal stretcher, is what we called it. So we created a stretcher to put under the seal, and it took like 6 of us to kind of walk it through. And we had just had like a dumping of snow the
Oh.
day before we were supposed to shoot this. So it was like 2 feet of snow. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it felt like 2 feet of snow. And we had about this, quarter-mile trek holding the dead seal on the dead seal stretcher through the snow near the river. And then we had to be very careful that we weren't going to make snow tracks in the areas that we were actually going to
You
shoot,
don't
the
want to
directions
see
that
it.
we were going to
Yeah.
shoot. So we like walked through the river a little bit we had our big waders on. And then finally we placed the seal. We had gotten good placement on it. And then on the day of the shooting, it started snowing a little bit. So I was pouring water over it the whole time, trying to melt the snow. I was literally standing, I have a picture of it too. I was standing in my waders, like in the water, just pouring water all over it until the moment we were about to shoot, just to make sure. And there was like this glaze that Penko had gave me to put onto it to make it look a little more oozy in the
Mhm.
decaying parts. So I was like putting this kind of jelly glaze on it. And then right before we rolled in that scene, that's all real snow in that scene, walking up to the dead seal. It was so beautiful. The gods just, made it a perfect, beautiful snowscape for us to feature our seal.
Oh my gosh. And make sure you have the right placement because God forbid you have to pick that thing back up again. It's like, actually, we're gonna move it over here. That's so fun. I love it.
Well, going back to kind of, you've talked a little bit about, the crossover with other departments. One thing we were curious about was if there is any crossover with like the graphics. You talked about on Ben and Adam's pod, like making the mugs. And so I was wondering, like, do you then have any input on like the different logos, or is that something that like they do separately and then they give you like all the assets to work with?
We have an amazing graphic designer. I call her our graphic guru. It's Tansy Michaud. And Tansy is like the soul of Lumen. She's been on since the beginning. Her first task, and the first thing she kind of dug into in January of 2020, was creating the logo. Like creating the logo of Lumen was a big deal because everyone knew that was going to anchor everything that
Everything.
we did
Hmm.
going forward. And so to create the logo, the modern day logo, she decided that she was going to create an entire timeline of logos since the company started.
Yes.
So she created like over 100 years worth of logo evolutions and was able to kind of mirror how other corporations, specifically pharmaceutical corporations, were rebranding their logos in certain time periods. And she was aligning that with the time periods of different CEOs. I mean, she got deep into it, and thank God she did, because we reference that for just about everything that we do when we're thinking about branding and we're thinking about presenting the history of Lumen. I mean, it's beautiful. And it took many rounds, and she kept refining it and kept digging into it. And so we ended up with the modern logo of just the teardrop and the name. And then we backed up a couple of logos to the Atlas logo, is what we call the INI severed floor logo. And so that was a logo of a previous logo from an older time. And so we all kind of decided that anything in the Audi world would have the teardrop, just exclusively the teardrop associated with it. Anything in the INI world, we would start with the Atlas logo and go from there. And so she and I work together all the time in figuring out, okay, so we're going to put the Atlas logo on the mug, and Cobell's mug should have this logo, and we need to make pins, and we need to make this file, and we need to make this the senior refiner checklist. And so we're constantly working together. She is also constantly working with the writers, like, to get real text in everything that you see. So everything that you see, the text in it is really coming from Dan and Mark Friedman and the other writers. And Tansy also is so dialed in to Lumen. Like, she's consulted on marketing, graphics, and marketing packaging. She's very trusted and dialed in. So the writers really trust her too. And she creates these formats and these things. And then, there's very few notes usually. She's super great. So in terms of the logo, I'm super involved with Tansy, and Tansy's super involved in the props. And that's a great crossover example because we're constantly in lockstep making these.
You know what that means, Kali? That means Tansy knows about our mystery CEOs that
I was
we
just
don't
going
yet
to say
know
that
about.
we just did our episode going through all the timeline of all the CEOs.
Yep.
So when you said that, I was like, oh, she has information that we don't have.
She has
You
knowledge.
guys need to talk to Tansy.
She knows.
You need to talk to Tansy.
Yeah, I'm like, that's so interesting that to follow the logo evolution. And it makes sense because, especially if you track like pharmas that go back to like the 18 whatevers, like eras and different CEOs, and their objectives are going to define like, this is how we're branding Lumen now. And that's so smart.
The original logo is like a beaker pouring a drop into a teaspoon. And you can see that when they walk through the town of Kier. There's like an apothecary, I think, in the background, and you can see that that's the original logo.
I'm like, notes. I'm like writing notes for other things.
You're like, go back, look for.
And so that got distilled down to just the teardrop from that.
Yeah.
So much sense. Okay. So then, are there any particular props that you have made for Severance in particular that were especially difficult to bring about or come together? Did you have any that you're just like, we just can't seem to get this right, and had to go through a few revisions or trials and errors? And then who makes the final call? I assume maybe Ben or whoever is directing that episode. But
is it bad to say almost every prop is a challenge? You know what? The show is so specific and so particular that I can't just go and buy an egg slicer at CVS and say that's our egg slicer. There's so much research that has to go into every single thing. So like the break room table, the AV cart, the hall passes, the Woemeter, the instruments for the band.
You guys had to pick the instruments for the band?
We had to powder coat and silver plate all of the instruments of the band because they all had to be uniform in color, and then we had to brand them. So we worked very closely with the band leader to make sure we had the right instruments, and then we had to go and make sure that we could powder coat them in a way in which they would still work.
Be functional, yeah.
The band was not happy with how they sounded after the powder coating,
wow.
But it's okay because we weren't recording live then and there, but they looked really great. But they still functioned. All the keys still worked on all of them. The saxophone keys, taking apart a saxophone, it has like 1,000 parts to it. And so, taking apart the saxophone and then re-putting it together we learned a lot about musical instruments in general, but a lot about saxophones.
That's wild.
So yeah, there's basically, I start with, if an object's in the script, I'll start with what I think makes the most sense for the story. Just for example, for the hall pass, it's just scripted as hall pass. Is it a sticker? Is it something you put on your collar? Is it like a button that you put on? And so I presented the stickers, I presented, I think, a button, I presented a bracelet. And so I remember, like, I used to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and when you went there, you had the little fold over metal admittance tags. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And that'd be cool if there's like a machine that dispensed them. And, and so I presented that too. And Ben immediately recognized it. He's like, oh, from the museum. And so we all gravitate towards that. It felt kind of right for, our aesthetic, and it felt like it could go in different places on different people. So there was a little bit of flexibility on where it could be rather than just like a bracelet on their hand. And so then what does it say? Does it just have an HP on it? Does it have the Lumen logo on it? So we went through many, many rounds of printing out, and we stamped them ourselves. We made it our own die. We stamped them ourselves, and then we printed directly on them. And there's a great example where Tansy would make up many different kinds of graphics for that. We would print up many in many different colors and Pantone colors. We're constantly matching and contrasting Pantone colors. And then we would line them up. And at first they were going to just be blue. But then with Sarah, the costume designer, coming in, we were like, oh, if somebody's wearing blue, we won't have a lot of contrast to be able to see it. So why don't we offer a green option as well? And so we lined them all up, and Ben chose the actual design of them. And then we made a couple of different colors, and then we camera tested the colors, because camera testing for us is so important, because the lookup table, the LUT that Jessica has established for the look of the show, changes the color of everything that you put in front of the camera majorly, and not in a predictable way. So it desaturates some colors. It makes grays go blue. There's certain colors you really need to have be more of a pop of color and more saturated, even though you look at it and it's like, that's a really bright green. But then when you get it on camera with the LUT, it is the perfect color green. It's the perfect Pantone shade that we need that'll match everything else. So there's a constant trial and error and review of everything, within every detail that we put into it.
I remember when I actually saw set photos for the first time of like the actual space for MDR versus how it appears on screen. It's like, oh, that LUT makes a huge difference. Like that
Right.
carpet looks crazy different. Like
Yeah.
it's wild to have the vision to be like, no, once we get it on camera, it's going to look great. But interesting to know that it's not always predictable how it's going to transform the color.
When I did the first Comic-Con activation I did, where we set up the entire, well, not the entire, but a large portion of the severed floor for San Diego Comic-Con in 2022, they had powder coated the O&D filing cabinets. They had gotten the same filing cabinets. They powder coated them light blue. And I was like, why are they light blue? Like, you guys got it wrong. And they were like, no, they're light blue. And I was like, I took pictures of the real ones. I was like, no, they're gray. They sent me back a screenshot, and it was light blue. I was like, oh, wow. So yeah,
Right.
I had never actually connected how much the LUT changes things, and it, in screen. And we went with the light blue because that's actually to give the fans the experience of what they see on, within it. We went with the light blue, and it was great, and it worked out great. But in my mind, it was super trippy.
That's wild. Could you imagine too if like fans get there and they're like, this doesn't look
right? Everything's just a little bit off.
right. Like I don't know. I'm not feeling it. Yeah, that's so smart.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wanted to go back a little bit. We talked a little bit about, filling the world so that the actors have that kind of, I guess, improv room with like what they're working with. That made me think of, I believe it might have been on Ben and Adam's podcast, but I'm not sure. There was an interview that Britt Lauer did where she talked about the scene in the after hours when James comes to see her in the office, and she was saying that she felt like she needed to have like a pen in her hand or something to like protect herself. And so that just got me thinking of like, how much input on the props are you getting from the actors as well? You collaborate on the props with so many other departments. How much is coming from the actors as well?
I thought that was so cool when Britt was searching within the environment that she was in, and picking up the pen and like using it as a weapon. What's cool is within the rules of the world that we established, we wouldn't be able to just suddenly plop in for that one scene to be convenient, like a pair of scissors. there's like these rules that we have to work within. And so that also makes it a little more freeing too. Like you can use anything within this world, but you're not going to get to just like fool the audience suddenly and say, oh, now there's a knife in here. And I think adhering to those rules is really important. We're in constant dialogue with the actors. They're so talented, like just as actors, they're just very talented actors. They understand the whole picture and also what their characters are doing. We worked with Trammell. I worked with Trammell a lot on the break room table in season 1. He had so many different pieces and dials and things that had to happen in a certain order for that break room table to like work within our story. And so with him, we were able to be like, okay, does it make sense to do this switch first, but should we do this switch next? And so he was able to help inform the story of what that is. And I think that there's so many examples. Whenever, when John Turturro says, I want a mini comb for my mustache, like we got him a Lumen mini comb, and like that informs his character so much, like those little things help his character. When Christopher Walken called us my team into one of his fittings, and he's like, I need a pen. And we were like, okay. So we got him we have this, vintage green and silver Parker pen that's severed in the middle. We're always looking for any prop or object that has a duality to it. So Parker pens are color on one side, silver on the top. And so we got him 7 different options of different Parker pens. And there was a vintage one. He was like, it's too clicky. It's too clicky. Like he wanted to be able to write and then use it. And he was like, it's too clicky. And so we were like, okay. And so we dissected the pen and made it so the spring was less clicky. And we swapped out the spring. And then he was able to use it in the scene. And it made so much sense for him to use it within the scene. And those kind of anything that they want, they're at such a talented level. They're not doing it for ego's sake to just see us run around. They're doing it because they are putting so much thought into what they're doing. And so we love that kind of dialogue. We love that interaction.
Oh, that's so fun.
I love that.
It's too clicky. And to know the mechanics too. How do we make it less clicky? You guys are such scientists. The props teams are such scientists. The way you have to pull apart, or scientists or engineers, whichever you want to pick, because you have to build something up, take it apart, figure out what made it do this, fix that, build it back up, see if that works. There's a lot of dissecting in the job. And you guys are really good at it.
We know a little bit about a lot. That's what we say. We know a little bit about a lot.
Okay, so Kat, you talked a little bit about Comic-Con in 2022. That was the first activation that Severance did. You have since done several others. You did Brazil CCXP. You did the station stunt, as I call it, because I was just like, this is wild. What have each of those experiences been like, as opposed to being on set and doing props for set? And you basically were the creative director for these. So how did that differ from what you have to do on a daily basis with Severance?
The Apple marketing team is just next level. I work closely there with Lee Stone and Sam Silverman, and they are so creative and they are so within canon of the show and within understanding of the world of the show, and just really, in my mind, are a part of the show in the way that they engage the fans and do it within the parameters of the world. And so I just want to clarify, I'm not the creative director. I'm the creative consultant, the show's creative consultant. So most of the time I'm leading the show's creative, or introducing the show's creative, or providing, actual stuff from the show. And so in 2022, after we had finished, the show had aired, and we were kind of in the beginnings of starting picking up season 2, pre-prep even. They contacted me and they were like, they're doing this Comic-Con. They're going to do the first ever Apple activation for Apple TV Plus activation for Comic-Con in San Diego. And they need some stuff from the show, or they need some advice from the show. Mm-hmm. And so Ben asked me to talk to them. And then I was kind of like, oh, wow. I saw their deck. The deck was 150 pages or something. They were doing the conference room, and they were doing O&D, and they were doing the break room table, and they were doing MDR. And I was like, oh, well, do you want some stuff? And so that kind of led into well, we're not shooting yet. Everything's here in this warehouse.
Mm.
Maybe we could ship you a lot of the stuff. And Ben really wanted to have the fans be able to experience the real thing and not like a marketing version of it, not like the fake, quick aesthetic version of it, but like the real stuff. And so I was like, yeah, we could ship the wellness table over, even though it's like 500 pounds. We could ship the real chairs over. We could, yeah, I could put the break room table into a crate and we could put it on a truck and I could set it up over there. And so we didn't actually know we could do any of this stuff. We were just like, yeah, I think we can do it. And Ben got really excited about it, and Apple got really excited about it. And fifth season gave their permission for us to do it. So we kind of created everything up and put it on a cross country truck. And the truck drove across country, and I flew out there and I set up the rooms and all the pieces that we had sent over exactly how it was in the show. And so that was really cool to see the way this activation company, it was Camp Grizzly, was interpreting a lot of the stuff and how right they were getting it and how like detailed they were getting it. And then to also be able to say, oh no, but this is the way the finger trap is. You can't have a finger trap like that you buy off the shelf. You have to make your own finger traps because they're different sizes. And to be able to like set up the break room table, season one version of the break room table with all its components, with the real super vintage overhead projector that I didn't know if it was going to burn out by being on for 12 hours a day. And then to see the fans get to walk through and actually walk through stuff that was real. That was awesome. That informed like, oh, hey, we have super fans and they are awesome. And so I was able to meet some of the fans, and they were able to show me like they made their own Pips card and they would make their own lanyard and look at this mug. Like they would bringing their props that they were recreating with such high fidelity to the event. And, I was able to watch backstage because it was videoed. We would have, security cameras inside all of it. And I was able to watch backstage as they would walk into MDR and sit down at the desk with all the real props and the real caricature and the real Mark's crystal cube and the real keyboards that they were tapping, and to see that they knew how to interact with the screens and refining the numbers, and to be able to see them know all the shortcuts because they had within the keyboards that really worked, and to be able to really refine the numbers. It was awesome. It was awesome. I think it got everyone, I mean, it got Ben excited, it got Apple excited. And I think they started seeing like, oh, there's something here where people are going to a deeper level with the show. And so then we were able to recreate it at CCXP, which is the largest, my understanding is the largest Comic-Con convention in the world. And so we created everything up, and we like literally shipped everything down to Sao Paulo and set it up there. It was a smaller activation. It didn't have as many rooms, but we did do the MDR room with all the real props again. And that had thousands of people go through it. That wasn't just a limited number with a ticket. That was everybody could go through that lined up. And they had lines like around the place. And so that was really cool to see many more people, and many people from not the US, many people worldwide reacting to it. And they love Severance down there. In Brazil, it is a very, very popular show. And so people were so excited to like really be, seeing the mugs or the compliance handbook or, all the little different details. And then shortly after CCXP, Sam Silverman, she said, I think we're going to try and pull off this stunt in Grand Central. And I was like, okay, what are you going to do? I thought like, oh, maybe they'll just hand out finger traps or something. She's like, no, we're going to put the MDR desk in a glass cube in Grand Central, and we're going to have refiners in there. I was like, oh, okay. And so we quickly had to wrap out CCXP and ship everything back in order to get things here in time for setting up the Grand Central, because I was only within a few weeks of each other. And then she called me and was like, the actors are actually going to come. And it was like next level. And so I went back into storage, and I started pulling little props that the actors could use within it. So like more files and the carpet sweeper, and then it just exploded. It was such a huge event, and it went so viral, and it was just a brilliant marketing piece right before the show was about to open. And then for the PR for your consideration and Apple PR, we did an event at Bell Labs,
Right.
in which
Oh,
we set everything up again.
so fun.
And then we did an installation for a month at Emmy House in LA, where we set up the new break room, MDR, and was able to, again, ship all the real stuff out there and have it kind of on display in an exhibit kind of way, interactive exhibit for the Emmy House for about a month.
Every time we saw posts go up from any of those activations, we were like jealous. So, but the Grand Central Station one in particular, I was like, that is wild. I could not imagine if I were in New York and just happened through, because it wasn't promoted, right?
It
It
was not
literally was just
promoted at
like,
all.
it's here.
Yep. Yep.
And just little by little throughout the day, people are discovering it and they're posting like, this thing is happening. Severance is doing this thing. And then people just start showing up in droves. And I was like, we're not anywhere close. Oh, and we're over here like, do you think they're going to do one in LA? Do you think they'll come over here? Like, it did not happen, but
It did not happen yet.
that's okay.
Yet,
And even like the stuff you guys did in London too, like
mhm.
that, like you said, Apple has been really on top of like promoting you guys this year and really like making these stunts and PR events so immersive and so like eye catching and attention grabbing. It's been wild to see. I couldn't imagine having to prop all that stuff. And it's not like you guys have set aside things that are like, this is just for activations. You're
No.
sending stuff from the set to these activations.
Yeah, which is a little nerve-wracking to
Yeah.
know that like thousands of hands, fan hands, have touched those keyboards. And, I was like, the trackballs come out. Like if you flip it over, the trackball falls out because of the way trackballs have to function. And I was like, I hope no one steals a trackball. I hope no one steals like any of the keycaps, of the keyboard. But the fans are so good and so respectful. They don't steal anything. It was amazing.
They're like, we just want to play in your world just for a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah.
Don't need to take it home. Oh, okay.
Well, as you mentioned, the fans, we love to look for details in the show, and you guys give us plenty. You may not be able to answer this question, but I'm going to ask
And
it
it's
anyway.
okay. Yeah.
Are there any Easter egg props that maybe the fans haven't noticed yet that you have been like waiting for us to notice?
Like the original Lumen logo. That was a fun, I didn't know that was
Yes.
there.
All I can say is there are.
Okay.
All right. So back to it. Gotta rewatch again.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We tried, guys. We tried.
We had to.
We had to ask. You never know. Um,
Sorry.
don't be. This is like a game now. It's like, all right. We kind of asked about like challenging props, but like, have there been any moments behind the scenes with the actors trying to get familiar with a prop that have just been like really funny or memorable moments for you that just have made your day in terms of like getting familiar with it or using it in a different way or anything like that?
There's some props that have fallen apart at the last minute. We,
Is it the trackball? Is it?
the trackball has fallen off. Let's see. The break room table in season 2, and we talked about it on Ben and Adam's podcast. That was pretty cool. The way Zach picked up the ping pong paddle handles and the hand ping pong paddles and started playing with that and kind of just improvising with that. That's been really cool. The way that Trammell worked with the break room table in season 1 was really awesome. He was able to really inform how the buttons work and kind of the flow of it was really cool. We had a failed prop. It was a horribly failed prop. It was supposed to be a battery pack, illuminized, a kind of battery pack that was going to power an object, but it really had to power an object. And it had to be a real battery pack that had enough juice in it. And we kept having problems with the design and the engineering of it. And we finally got it, and we got it the day of shooting, which is never ideal
Where you
and
want to
usually
be.
never
Yeah.
happens. And I went to pick it up, and the entire handle and top broke off. All 4 sides that were covering the actual battery pack, like just popped open like a birthday cake, like a surprise birthday cake, and the whole thing was just like broken and destroyed. And so we it was like everyone in panic mode. And so we started scrambling around and we found another alternate that was much lighter and smaller and we covered it and we had our scenic, put the Lumen logo on it. And it actually was a much more brilliant solution than this like way over engineered and over thought out rig that we had made. And it worked out really well. The scene is not in the final edit,
So
but you
can't
can't
say.
see, you can't find it. But yeah, there's definitely been some oh shoot moments, oh panic moments. But not too many because we do really try to R&D the heck out of everything. You know, none of us like surprises or can afford surprises. And so we have very few moments of like having to scramble in the moment.
Right. What's one prop? If you haven't, have you taken any props? Are there any props that Kat keeps for herself?
Well, I have an original eraser here.
Yes.
I have a bunch of post-it notes, the Lumen post-it
Lumen
note
branded.
pads. And I will say maybe I have a little cachet of finger traps lying around. I do have those.
Nice. Let's say it's the end of the run, which is hard to say because we don't know how many seasons it's going to go or how many more props will pop up. But at this point, if there were a prop that you could keep for yourself, is there something that you're like, I really want that sign, something, poster, something?
I really love the MDR keyboard. It's one of my favorites. I would really just, we could probably, connect it to a computer. I would just, that's one thing that I would love. That's traveled with me all over these activations. They're the real 4 keyboards that we use in MDR. And I just kind of love the design of it. It's kind of big and clunky, but it's kind of satisfying too. And the Pantone colors are really specific. And yeah, I would love one of those.
Okay. Save a keyboard for Kat.
If they survive. If they survive.
Also true.
Right. Okay. We are going to maybe not rapid fire, but we're going to try as quickly as possible to get through all of our random other prop questions.
Okay.
So, my perseveration of season 1 was the totes. I spent a lot of time thinking about the tote bags. I just want to know, were there a lot of different tote designs? Will we see more of the tote? Maybe you can't answer that. Do you personally have any?
Or any to spare?
Yeah.
The tote bags went through just as much R&D as like the Woemeter did. The tote bags were so hard. And I started out by just going to a company, like a promotional company that can print logos on bags. So we printed on every single different color we could find, with just the Lumen logo on them. And then we liked the blue color. It was very close to our MDR blue color. And then we were like, okay, but now we need to know what the compliance handbook looks like. So we had to wait until we made the compliance handbook. And then we took apart and edited and cut up the one that we had gotten from the promotional company and made it so it fit the exact size of the compliance handbook. And then at the last minute, we didn't really like how long the straps were. So we re-sewed it. Like we found the tailor again. We went to the tailor. We cut down the size of the straps to make it just handheld and not a shoulder, which originally was the shoulder one. And then at the last minute, we didn't like the color. So we did it all again with a different color of the Lumen logo. And then finally, it was time to shoot and we shot it. But because of that, and because when we buy them, you buy
a bunch
them at 1,000 a time. We have all these kind of reject ones that have either a different length of strap or a different width or a different color of logo. And so we do have a bunch of those, and we have bins and bins of those. And those are what we give out to, VIPs when they come, like swag bag. We call them our swag bags. We'll put a finger trap in there. We'll put a pen in there, a couple of Post-its in there and give them a bag.
Nice.
And so, yes, there's a lot of R&D into that. And then it made sense that we wanted to streamline and kind of update when Bert brings in the new tote bag in season 1 as a gift to Irving. And so we knew we wanted the color to be not blue and not green. And we wanted it to be a little bit more sleeker, a higher quality. And so we made those from scratch. We just had our tailor we found a material that we liked. We printed directly on them. And then we had our tailor make those from scratch.
Okay.
And there are not as many as those left over.
Well,
Yeah.
hand tailored. Yeah, that's a special bag. Okay, Kat, do you know what words appear in Mr. Milchick's performance review word cloud?
I do. It's entirely authentic and real. Tansy made the entire booklet and the entire lunch menu and every single insert from it with the paper clips and so yeah, that is a book that's made entirely, and it is really it does track Mr. Milchick's week that he was having since he became the head of the Severed Floor.
Oh, I love that. I remember when we saw that, I was like, they put the graphic design of the performance review, they put so much into it, but I didn't notice the word cloud heading until a recent rewatch, and I was trying to figure out what words would be
What's in the word cloud?
in the word cloud. Love it.
Yeah, it's all real. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Tansy worked so hard on that and it looked so good and it was just so lumen. It was just so like in these like kind of line graphic like icon graphics, kind of like nice and laid out so beautifully and then it was like saying such searing stuff. It
Yes.
was yeah, she did such a good job of that.
Hey, the sting of that.
Okay, similar to the tote question, I guess. You did talk about the mugs on the main Severance podcast. Are there, mugs that haven't shown up on camera yet? Because I know we get a little glimpse when they are going to get Irving's mug that, oh, they have mugs for everyone in case this happens for everyone. Are there just, other mugs that you guys have already designed?
There are a bunch of mugs that we designed that are never going to make it to camera. They're just terrible. There's a lot of reject mugs in my closet, in my kitchen. Yeah, there were some mugs that they came back and their color just wasn't right. Their
Mm.
shape was awkward. The logo when we printed it on was crooked. So there's a bunch of reject mugs. And then the addition of the face mugs, the trigger handle face mugs in season 2 was, a function of the story. The idea that the Milchick was pulling this mug and it's like, oh, wait a minute, they're waiting for all of them to potentially have a funeral at any time, any given time. Those were really fun to make, and we made those for that scene. But as of right now, the only other mugs out there are some reject ones, some terrible rejects.
They weren't good, guys.
They weren't. And I will say, I'm just going to say this really quick because it's a little known thing. The bottom of all of the trigger handle mugs, we created our own imprint in the bottom of those mugs. We molded and like hand molded a bottom and then imprinted the Lumen logo. So when they were drinking, you would really
You'd always
see
see.
that Lumen made them. Conceivably, O&D makes those mugs. Otherwise, we'd either just be covering up the real world's logo. And I just thought it was early on. And I was just like, we need to reinforce that when they're drinking, because if they are going to be drinking from it. And so we had Panko mold something for the bottom of it and then imprint the Atlas logo into the bottom of it.
I love that.
So now we got to look for that. Okay, so one of my many Callie has totes. I have food. I'm the food obsessive when it comes to Severance things. So anything that has to do with food, I'm like wild. But the egg slicer, okay, I'm obsessed with it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, whoa, what is that? And I didn't know if it was. I later found out, but I didn't know if it was something that you guys originally designed or if it actually existed in reality. How did we come to the conclusion of getting the egg slicer? How did we find it? Do we have extras? Can I buy it on eBay?
You cannot buy the one from the show on eBay. You can't do that. The scene was scripted that it was just a hard-boiled egg. It was actually scripted, yeah, one hard-boiled egg, and she eats it. So when Uta directed that episode and when Uta was starting to kind of unpack what that is and her relationship with her father and what that scene, like the tension in that scene, she was thinking there's a device where you can drop some sort of, it's like a long stem and you drop something and you crack the top of a soft-boiled egg. And pull it off and eat the soft-boiled egg. And she was like, it feels like we want to have something a little violent to open up this egg in some way. And so we were still thinking maybe there was a shell on the egg. So we were like thinking of ways that we could crack open the egg. And an interesting note is we didn't know that it was going to be regular eggs. We were experimenting with bizarre different kinds of eggs. We had, what would it be if it was an ostrich egg or some other kind of egg? We did a lot of R&D, but at the end we just wanted it to be, we all landed on just kind of regular eggs.
Okay.
And so we were trying to think like, is there, and then Udo was like, why don't we take the shell off? And then we might have some more options. And so we were trying to find something that was like a guillotine that would slice the egg in half.
Mm.
Some sort of like dropping something heavy and slicing the egg in half. We fabricated a couple of them. It wasn't as cinematic as we thought it was going to be. It wasn't as consistent as we thought it was going to be. And so we started looking for some vintage egg slicers, just in general, vintage egg slicers. And we came across a couple of different ones, the kind where you bring the top over and you slice it into slices. That also is like we might all have those in our kitchen. It wasn't very interesting. And then we found these vintage slicers that sectioned an egg off. And I don't think there was as many sections originally. I think we put in the 5 different, the lines that would make it 5 sections. And so, we had it nickel plated because the vintage one that we got was old and patinaed. And then we put in more of the cables that actually slice the little lines that slice the egg. And we camera tested it, and it had a lot of options to it, and it was very visual and graphic, and that's the one that we went to. And then that was all Uda and Britt kind of formulating how the egg pieces bloomed and how they were shuffling around on the plate to make these different images before she actually started eating the little bites of it. Again, an example of like, we're providing this and then letting the creative team also run with it too.
It was visually arresting. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I just was like, oh my gosh. Like you said, where they took it from there, it added a whole dimension of like, who are these people? Like, what is their life?
Exactly. You can imagine this is a ritual that was being passed down, seeing the hard-boiled egg versus eating them raw. Like,
yes.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that kind of got endowed into that.
Bravo. Also, I missed the last part. Sorry, I was so into the egg part. The tableware as well was very visually captivating. How did you guys stumble upon like the plateware that you guys had set at the table for that scene?
Yeah, the set decorator David Schlesinger is great, and he went and kind of tried to dig around for visually interesting vintage dishware and china. And he found this one-off plate with this image of this little boy being sat down, little figure being sat down, and came back, and everyone's like, "It's great." And then I was like, "David, there's only one of them. What are we gonna do?"
Yeah.
So for props, we always say one is none. And so you can never just have one of a thing, because what if that one thing after 5 takes shatters on the floor and breaks in half? And so David and his team went through this entire journey of figuring out a way to fabricate a double of that plate for us so that we could have it just in case. We ended up not needing it, knock on wood, but
you never know.
It's a testament to him that he was not like, screw you, you're gonna have one and
you're gonna like it.
Yeah. No, and it worked out really well. And what they did with the egg surrounding it, it was just it was really great.
I can only imagine you guys were probably handling that with so much care. Like, everybody move. This one person handles the plate, and that's it. Nobody else touch it.
It's nerve-wracking when they're like hanging a light right above the table, or they're like hanging a 4x or a flag or something. Mm-hmm. You're just like, oh God, don't let that grip stand fall on my plates.
Okay, next question. Another one that you probably won't be able to answer, but maybe a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obsessed a little bit with the Woemeter. I've looked at the picture of it extensively to read what is on it. And I just wanted to know if you can illuminate what anything on there might mean. I know there's like frequency dials and filter dials. If you can't tell us what it means in the show, like what are those things pulling from maybe? Because I don't even know like what kind of things it would be equivalent to in the real world.
The Woemeter was a great build, and that was basically just said she's holding the Woemeter, and we had to figure out what that meant. And so the Woemeter, we did a lot of research and pulled some references from the Scientology e-meter. So the stones that Gemma's holding were hand carved by Penko, again, our master sculptor, and they have a silver paperweight underneath them that's carved into the stone that's supposed to be a conductive surface that is reading kinetic energy. And the Woemeter is responding to the input that the stones are sending to it. The build was so much fun. We had so much fun with this build. Eric Feldberg, who is our prop concept illustrator, we worked with him to create the actual design. We made a bunch of models off of it. We worked with Make3, which is a fabrication company, to build the piece and CNC it. And then we put little servers in there and we put things in there so we could actually control the indicators on those different meters. And then we pulled knobs from old Nagra machines, and we used vintage Nagra knobs as all of the dial turning, which was really cool.
It's so great. It's such a great piece. I want to touch it myself.
I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It looks like it was made professionally and manufactured in a way that Lumen would manufacture something that was a scientific tool for them. This wasn't for show or curated for the severed floor. This is like a tool that they were using to read a measure of woe, which is like kind of an intangible.
We're wondering, which I know you can't say, but we're wondering if there's one for each
Temper.
Thank you. So it's like, is there a frolic meter?
I will not. I'm not going to comment.
No comment here.
We know we're getting into where you can't.
I take the fifth.
We'll just continue to speculate. Okay, so on that note, the Christmas room for Gemma, there's so much stacked in there. It's like a visual Where's Waldo. How did you decide what was going to go in the room? Obviously, it's with the intent that we know that a lot of it was made from O&D specifically. Was Gemma meant to interact with any of the rest of it, or was it always meant to just kind of be in the background? What's going on there?
Well, I think the idea is that she had opened all of those gifts as part of being in this room, and we're catching her at the tail end of having to write the thank you notes for all of those gifts, which, Dan always talks about how he dreads writing thank you notes, especially Christmas thank you notes or holiday thank you notes. And so for him, that was kind of the idea of something not fun and torturous. And so David Schlesinger and Jeremy Hindle, the designer, came up with a bunch of objects, vintagey looking objects that they powder coated to make it seem like O&D had 3D printed all of them, and then created the scene with the Christmas tree and the tinsel coming out of it. And then, the idea is that they had all been wrapped at the beginning of her entering that, and that she had unwrapped all of them and then had to go through this horrific process of writing thank you notes by hand.
A lot of thank you notes.
It's a lot of thank you notes. And that pen went through a lot of R&D, the pen that she used. The degrouter also, originally, they put the line in about it being technically a degrouter. Originally, we all had a little confusion about what a grouter versus a degrouter is, but we figured it out. The pen was a pen it's a Japanese company that makes these really beautiful fountain pens. We were able to use that. And then Tansy made the cards that are so awesome with the single goat on them. And we just printed out a lot of them. They were letter pressed, those cards. Each one of them was hand pressed so that you could get a little bit more texture out of them by our collaborator at Rag House, which is an awesome print house that uses a lot of vintage techniques.
Oh, Kat, it just occurred to me. You were responsible for the goats.
I was responsible for the goats. Me and my team are responsible for all the goats.
All the baby goats. You brought a meal into our lives.
A meal and all 60 of them and mammalians. And we were responsible for the goats in season 1. And that's when we worked with our animal wrangler, and we brought the baby and pygmy baby goats in for season 1. I can't remember the exact number. I feel like we had 14 of them in season 1 for the small goat room. And then when mammalians got written in season 2, or when that episode script came out, we weren't sure how much we were actually going to do, or how much we were actually not going to do. Or are we just pretending there's goats? Are we really building it in a stage? Are we really building it in a room? And then Ben and Jeremy started coming together and thinking like, no, I think we really need a gigantic, overwhelming space to make mammalians Lumen-esque, the surprise of this gigantic open space with seemingly outdoors, but inside kind of echoed Kier's mansion in the perpetuity wing or Kier's house in the perpetuity wing, where it's very unexpected. There's grass, there's a house, there's a ceiling. And so they went on a whole journey of trying to find locations outside where they could build over it. And they found this golf course in Brooklyn, and they brought in a huge tent, one of the biggest tents in the country, and tented that area. And then we had to bring in the goats. So we brought in 60 baby goats and pygmy goats from Pennsylvania. They were trailered in. We built an annex space outside of the big tent for them to live in for the 3 days on this golf course while people are still playing golf. It was a very bizarre situation. These goats are just roaming around. People are like, birdieing and stuff. And then with my team, we really had to reinforce. We put 8-foot fences up because we didn't know how high they could jump. We didn't know how much they could knock over the fencing or not. And then we created like a chute. We created like a road, a fenced road that led from the annex to the tent. And those goats were so happy inside of that tent, munching on the entire length, like football fields worth of fresh grass that they could eat. And then they kind of just lived in there all day, and under the supervision of the Wrangler and the American Humane Association, they were like, no, these goats are content. You just let them live in here and you shoot around them. And you don't tell a goat where to hit their mark or when, that you just let the goats be goats. And the crew loved interacting with them. They were like eating everything. They were trying to nibble on shoelaces and, the techno crane and camera cables, and it made everyone happy. It was just a really lovely, and Gwendolyn Christie was so great with the goats, and just kind of had that energy around her of the goats wanting to gravitate towards her. It was a really awesome few days.
Oh,
I love it so much.
now I know. Oh, props are animals. Animals are props. Okay. Kali, what do you got next?
Can you tell us a little bit about the creation of the head cubes, specifically Mark's glass head cube versus the wooden one in season 2 for Dario?
Yeah, the head cube was the first thing that I did. Mark's head cube was the first thing that I did way back in January. I, went through an online company, and I put in we didn't have a real picture or a show picture of Adam Scott. So I just pulled something off the internet and, ordered the head cube. I brought it into one of our first meetings. It was an all department meeting. I just sat it on the table. I lit it up and let it spin. And suddenly it was like, okay, that's it. We ended up we took our own photos of, Adam in character as Mark. And then we used that as the basis for creating the crystal head cube. And then we also used that as the basis for the balloons, and also the basis for the picture on his mug. So that was kind of like, the idea is that Lumen had a picture of all of them as what they would use if they ever needed to imprint the picture on something. And so when the new refiners came in, we had the opportunity to create all these new perks that their different branches would have offered them, and that their different branches would have been allowed to bring with them. And I can't remember, I think it was my idea, I can't remember who it was, but the idea of like, well, maybe Dario has a head cube. And so with that, I was like, well, Dario's branch is really poor. He says it in the script, so that's, supported by the script. They had broomsticks for their perpetuity wing. They wouldn't be able to have a crystal cube. So the poor version of the crystal cube is a wooden head cube, carved out of a hunk of wood. And so then I went to Panko. I was like, Panko, we got to carve Dario into a piece of wood and make it a cube. And then we just sat him on like a little jewelry box spinning type of Lazy Susan platform, so he could spin it himself instead of having it constantly go around, because that's the poor version. And so, that wasn't scripted. That was something like we just came up with, and then we presented it to Ben and Dan, and they like loved it and thought it was smart, or like thought it could work. And then the bit where when Dylan comes back in, and they have that moment of him like questioning what is picking up the cube and questioning it, throwing it in, that's all written because that piece was created. And so that's a great example of how we all kind of build on the world together and kind of inform the story together. And that was a really fun piece to do.
Love it. It's one of my favorite little random details.
All right, we're back on food, Kat.
Food.
Okay, listen. I know you've told the story about the black watermelon head on the main podcast with Ben and Adam, which for anyone listening, if you haven't heard, was a really cool sculpting thing that wasn't fruit, was foam. And when you said that, that shocked me entirely because I was like, it looked so real. It looked like real watermelon. That's impressive. But then my big thing has been the vending machines. I've been obsessed with them since season one. I would love to know how you decide what goes in the vending machines, and even just like the boxing for all of like the packaging is so interesting and eye-catching. And then the marshmallows we have at the Ortbo, we're trying to figure out how you guys got those branded. I mean, obviously not with an actual brand because it would melt the marshmallow.
Oh, that's smart, actually. That would have been, that's good.
I just figured it will disintegrated the whole thing. But yeah, what's going on with each of those? One by one or
one by one. So the vending machine was written in to season one, and it was just gonna be a vending machine with just stuff that just, wrapping a soda can with a lumen sticker instead. And then as everything got so bespoke within the world, and we started understanding that lumen was like a double-edged sword, like they're providing these things that are supposed to make the innies' lives palatable, but then there's also there's always like a thorn in the rose of what they're providing. There's always something, and because the innies don't know any better, Lumen could really provide any type of food in those vending machines, and the innies don't really have a choice in the matter. And so we had in season one a huge R&D session and kind of brainstorming session, and Dan provided a lot of ideas. Tansy provided a lot of ideas as well of what kinds of food would be in there. And so with that, we sourced the vending machine, and then figured out how many rows we had, how many different types of items we wanted to have, and then Tansy went to town on creating the packaging. And then we had 2 different packagings made. We went to a real product packaging company, and we had half the product packaging made by them. And then we went to a print house and collaborator 808, who does a bunch of our prop printing to print other ones that were a little bit more bespoke and harder to put together. And then the interesting part of the vending machine that I don't know how many people know, but in season one, the jar, limit 2 tokens per day per refiner. I'm paraphrasing, but we only put 7 tokens in the jar every single time that it was that was the jar was only allowed to have 7 tokens. So there was always that's a Lumen thing. Like everybody can have 2, except there's not enough for 2.
Enough for 2 for everybody.
And what kind of dynamic would that create, or tension would that create within the refiners? And yeah, that was always a little detail I loved that we're just gonna put 7 tokens in there.
I just figured it was like, oh, someone's already used some. Oh, that's diabolical.
It starts with 7. It starts with 7. But that changes in season 2. So we did a complete rebrand of all the product packaging in season 2 for the vending machine. And we filled up the entire jar, overflowing with tokens in season 2. We also went to Tetra Pak in season 2 and worked with them to create some of the drink packs that were new for season 2. On the kitchenette, there's some drink packs on the counter in the kitchenette by the table, and those we made with Tetra Pak.
Okay, so how did you guys print on the marshmallow?
This was another really challenging thing. So there's a company that prints edible images on real marshmallows. That was the first, great, we solved it. The marshmallows came back and they were too thin to be impressive marshmallows. So then we had our food stylist Will Liao make marshmallows that were twice as thick. And we printed wafers with the Cure image onto them. But then we had to test to see if the wafers would melt. And the wafers didn't melt in the same way that they should if they were printed on. So then we bought a little machine that's supposed to be for the top of lattes. You can print with some an edible ink, or buy some food coloring ink on the top of a latte, and it's a little 1.5 to 2 inches, and you can print an image on that. So then we went back and we tried printing on that, and basically we had to have Will bake us hundreds, almost thousands, probably not thousands, but hundreds of marshmallows that were the twice as thick size, cut into perfect squares. We printed individually on each one, and we put confectioner sugar on all the sides, so the sides wouldn't get sticky and they wouldn't stick together. So when they dumped into the fire, they wouldn't stick together. And that's how we did. That was weeks. That was weeks and weeks of processing.
I knew I wasn't crazy when I was like, those marshmallows seem huge. I've never seen marshmallows that look this big.
Yep.
They are bigger than
custom Lumen marshmallows.
What a waste in the fire. Okay, Callie.
Were you involved in the development of the UUR? We have to ask about the UUR.
You are. It's your namesake, of course.
Mhm.
Yes, there was in season one in the very beginning during prep. There was a lot of big discussions about what this book jacket was and how it was going to define Rickon's character. And we basically, I pulled a bunch of research, self-help book covers and their images, like Tony Robbins, where it's, the author staring straight in front of you, front and center. And then we also pulled some research from Dianetics, different covers for Dianetics where the volcano is exploding behind. And then Tansy took all of that and kind of combined it into this one large, image that we know is super iconic now of the face and the kind of explosion behind his head and the red. And so then we got a base book. We got a base book that we were going to make the size out of. So it was our reference for size. And then we took the book pages. So Dan wrote a lot. I think it's almost 100 pages worth of that book that he wrote. And so we took those pages, and Tansy laid them out. We took the color of the book jacket, the actual book itself, not the jacket, but the actual linen, which if you take the cover off, we haven't ever seen it with the cover off, but it's a red linen with the UUR stamped into it. And then the book edging, the red metallic edging that we put on it, we took that all to our bookbinder and our bespoke bookbinder, and she worked her magic, and she made real books for us based on all of this information and really bound real books. And so all of those books that you see that Rickon and everyone is reading are really bound books with the real pages bound into them, with, the red linen real cover, with the red book edging, with the cover on it that Tansy made.
Fantastic.
Will we ever get the book in its entirety? We want it. Really, this will be just a really quick one, and then we'll wrap it up. The waffle party masks, paper mache or something else, or
paper mache. They are
Okay.
paper mache.
Okay.
So we were I was just tasked with figuring out a mask for the waffle party dancers, and we knew that they wanted to be represent the four tempers. And so we came up with we had lots of revisions and ideas and created a big book of different types of masks. And then we decided and we landed on that we wanted it to be as close to the painting, Kier Taming the Four Tempers, looking as possible. So there would be an immediate recognition to that. And so we kind of isolated what each of those faces looked like. And then Panko, our sculptor, sculpted those in oversized and a little bit more grotesque than what was in the painting. And then he made the Kier one also from that painting. And then those dancers, they were real troopers, man. We had many, many different versions of how we were going to pad the inside for their heads. They were like turning their heads, but the mask would stay where it was and they wouldn't be able to see. And so we had many fittings with them, and they were troopers. They were great. And we finally found ways to like strap it down and hold the masks on. And it became really iconic, and especially the Kier head that Dylan wears sitting there, that image of him sitting there with the whip right there. We made the whip with the 9
y'all
core
did make it.
principles.
Oh,
We made it by hand. Yeah, someone on our team made it, and that was really fun. Those were fun masks to
I've
make.
seen that Kier mask pop up at a few cons. People are definitely into it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have so many more questions, but we can't ask them all. We can't ask them all. Go ahead, Callie.
Okay. Well, Rodnesha and I got the opportunity to ask this question of Dan and a few of the cast members at the Paley Fest, so we thought it would be fun to also ask you. So if there was a brand new perk for the innies that you could design and, possibly build or develop a prop to represent, what do you think it would be?
Oh, wow. There's so much that they need down there. There's so much that they could use down there. My first instinct is a pizza party, but I don't think a pizza party is good. I think it should be an ice cream machine, an ice cream dispenser that dispenses a dollop of ice cream, like in a very lumen way. at a time, once a quarter or something like that, but it's always there as like, oh, I wish I could get more ice cream. You just want to break
They
into it and get
basically
more
get
ice
like the
cream.
little taster cup you get at the froyo
Exactly.
places.
Or they get a gigantic bowl and just one little dollop in the middle.
That's even more. Oh, that's even more. I,
I love it.
Yeah. I
That's
think,
perfect.
because every kid loves ice cream and they're still in their kind of younger years of existence. And I feel like that's a great kind of two-edged, like double-edged sword incentive.
the saddest ice cream party I've ever seen.
Yes, the ice cream social was like a common answer, I think, but that
Oh, was
the
it? Oh,
machine
cool.
is that makes it Lumen for sure.
That makes it Lumen. Yeah, definitely.
We're trying to give them more. You're like, less. Lumen is less. Lumen equals less. Kat, to wrap things up, what would you say are some of the, and maybe there aren't any, but in your opinion, what would you say are maybe some of the bigger challenges facing like prop masters in the industry today? Have things changed since you've started working in the business? We're thinking especially with like the advent of like different technology things, AI, all these conversations are happening. Do you feel any of that coming into your space? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a very hot topic that a lot of me and my colleagues talk about and continually talk about and continually try and discuss and get ahead of. In terms of just the most immediate challenges that we're finding is the industry as a whole, is the dynamic of the industry as a whole has very much changed since the strikes, the dual strikes of the writers and the actors. And there is a crunch within the industry. There is an ask that, well, first of all, there's less that's being greenlit, less
Mhm.
work, less shows kind of in general. That's the start as the streamers and the studios start kind of redefining themselves and finding a new baseline. So there's less work. Some regions are lucky to have more work than others, but there is overall across the whole world less work, less film work out there. So that's the first challenge. The work that is being produced is being asked to be produced with less resources, less manpower, less money in budgets, in a faster pace.
Mm-hmm.
And so the budgets are crunching, the manpower is crunching. And so we are being asked to do more with less, which is always challenging. And we're being asked to do more with less without the production value being affected at all. Audiences are expecting a certain level now because of so much prestige TV that handing them anything less, you lose the audience immediately. So we have to maintain that quality of what we're doing, figure out ways and be adaptive and be savvy about thinking outside the box of how we do things so that we can achieve what we are being asked to achieve with less. And we're also like feeling that kind of looming. We're not sure what AI is. We're not sure how AI is going to affect our industry. And, is it doomsday where we're not going to have jobs in 5 years? Or is it a tool that we're going to be able to use to work with? All of CGI right now and all of visual effects that are being used as tools within the shows that we're projects that we're working on. They're not necessarily replacing people. Is there a way where we can merge and synergize the artistry that us as people bring with some efficiencies and some abilities that we can't right now achieve that AI could achieve? Is there a way that we can find a place where we can keep our jobs and also just up the game by using it as a tool? And I think that's the kind of existential question that's looming right now over the entire industry. And I feel like you cannot replace the artistry and the craftsmanship of what people and teams and departments bring to the process of making a film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do believe that the tool of what computers and AI can bring will be what it is used as a tool to just bring better content to people.
Hard agree. We're all hoping it's the latter and not the former, that
Right.
some parameters will be put around it, because I do agree. I don't, and maybe I'm naive in saying this and maybe I'm old school or whatever. I just don't see something like that being able to do what, like you said, human teams of people can do. Like so much is discovered in the failure and in the workarounds that you'd never come to just on an initial pass, right? So
Right.
I just feel like that's just something that has to do with human innovation that can't be duplicated with AI. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but I disagree. I disagree. We need people. Creativity needs creative minds, needs human innovation and ingenuity, needs people. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Okay. Kat, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for giving us your time. We could sit with you for hours, but we all have lives to lead and we all have things to do. I'm sure you want to enjoy the rest of your day as well. Kali, anything you want to say before we wrap up? Or Kat, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say you both are like part of the Severance world. You're so detailed in what you do. You work at it, you layer things, you're thoughtful, you're intelligent, and you're really great at what you're doing with this podcast. And in my mind, you're honorary members of our world.
Oh, you heard it here first, people. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we had such a great time with you. Thank you for being on the show with us.
Thank you, guys.
To all of our listeners, you can follow Kat on Instagram. Her handle is @KatMMiller. And be sure to follow us on all of the socials. You can find us at the UUR Pod. You can also email us with questions at theuurpod@gmail.com. And if you feel so inclined to support our work on Patreon, we are at patreon.com/theuurpod. And please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. I don't have a quote for you today, so I will just leave you with, this has been the UUR. Thank you for listening.
Props are animals. Animals are props.
Thank you so much.